Hello and welcome to Jom Discuss, the weekly news and culture show where we talk anything and everything happening in our world today. In this episode, we talk racism, language barriers, and that pesky little Ola Bola controversy. Hello everyone and welcome to the very first episode of the Jom Discuss podcast. I have four very talented people with me. First one, Kula.
Hi.
We have Asyraf.
What's up?
Mirosha.
Hi guys.
And last but not least, we have Regina.
Hello.
For this very first episode, we are going to cover something that is brought up very often in daily lives, being in Malaysia, a multicultural society, and that is the issue of race. But it's not just in Malaysia, I mean worldwide this is something that's been brought up time and time again, especially in the last year. We were talking earlier about how racism starts, especially in Malaysia, racism starts from a language barrier. Mirosha was saying something about how back in school she had trouble like getting to know other races due to language.
Okay, my school wasn't so bad because it was like a kebangsaan school, so it was like completely multiracial.
Yep.
But then when I came out of school, right, there were people from like Chinese speaking, like Chinese schools, and then like there were Tamil schools. So people preferred to talk in their own mother tongue because that's what they were comfortable with. And I'm not going to say that there was like direct racism because they just purposely wanted to exclude me from the conversation, but that's just what they preferred. Or sometimes it just came so naturally that they did not realize. But you know, it's like if there is a group of Chinese people, let's say, and then like you are the minority, right? Of course, they prefer to talk in their language because that's what they
feel comfortable.
They feel comfortable.
Yes.
So, but they don't realize that language is one of the biggest barriers when it comes to racism. You don't realize it, but it's an unintentional form of racism as well. Yeah.
Well, me personally, I'm what you would call a typical banana. So I'm Chinese, I can't speak Mandarin, and like Kula was saying, you're what? Coconut. He can't speak Tamil. So I mean, for people like us, where we didn't really have a choice, we need to find people that can speak English lah kan. So, but even then, that comes with its own problems as well because I think a lot of races they feel that like, oh, you speak English, so you're too good for us lah now. I think that's what I think Asyraf, you were saying earlier about something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do not understand this whole concept of you should somehow change your respect towards others when they are able to speak in English. Because at the end of the day, what kind of benefit do you want? Like, you want us to progress, you want us to learn English, but at the same time, you demean us when we do speak in English.
Do you guys think that this stems from a more traditional thinking? I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you think this comes from something that our parents or our relatives passed down to us? Where like, if like, oh, that person can speak English and I'm probably from rich family, probably
on a
probably a bit more atas side,
Do you feel that Malaysia was more united when more people spoke Malay? Like maybe about 40, 50 years ago, when primarily like the lingua franca was Malay.
Because I know that when Tun Razak first started the education system, and when they made not Tun Razak, what the our first
Abdul Rahman,
Prime Minister-
Regina.
Okay.
Go on, this podcast reputation go down.
No, because when they first started searching for our Bahasa Kebangsaan, they put it as Malay because they wanted that to unite everyone, and that actually I think it worked from the start of it, and then they wanted to progress, and then that's why we had so much of conflict between that language for education going back and forth from English to BM and so on. It became like something that was politicized instead.
Because as time went by, they realized the importance of English. But then what they didn't realize was that Malay was equally as crucial because it's whatever it is, it's a national language. Like if you look at the older generation, like my grandparents' generation, right, they all speak among each other, among other races, like in Malay, and how the younger generation can communicate with their generation is in Malay. So there are some people in our generation or even younger who don't know Malay because like everything, the English is just so focused right now that they can't communicate with the older generation because they don't know Malay. And what about learning languages? Because it's a language. There are people who know 6 languages. So what is the big deal in knowing both Malay and English? Like, why do you have to just focus like, oh, this is more important than that.
Yeah,
you need
definitely.
this more than that to survive
I
out
think
there.
it's very unfortunate that in Malaysia there are a lot of people who choose not to either speak Malay or not to speak English out of pride. Like they do know how to speak it,
Yeah.
but they're like, oh, I don't want to speak Bahasa Penjajah, or I don't want to speak Malay
Yeah.
because I don't like our country.
Yeah.
To be honest, I actually went overseas for a contest recently, and then we went to another country for a contest. So there were like so many other countries, but I met a Malaysian team there. And you know, when you meet a fellow Malaysian, it somehow comes so naturally. Like you start speaking in Manglish.
Yeah.
Like most of it was Malay, because like I missed Malay. Okay, it was a week, and I already
Yeah.
started missing, and those words. And I was speaking in Malay, but the replies were 100% in English. You know, if this person that I was communicating with was speaking that way, because there were people from other countries like who did not understand. Yeah, I get it, but it was just both of us. So I'm like, why are you so? But she knew Malay. It's just that she did not want to converse in that language, and I'm like, I don't know. Like I didn't want to say that she thinks she's better than me or anything. But some people, they just, why didn't you want to converse it? Like you understand what I'm saying, right? And why do you not want to?
May I ask, was she a Malay herself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's somehow like a psychological thing. Like when you order your food somewhere, like Malays who are able to speak English, they prefer not to converse in Malay, because I feel it creates some kind of perception towards you. When I came to Monash, before I spoke a word to them, they would think I'm the typical Malay lah, the kind of person who will probably not open about a few certain things. And when I speak to them in English, and it's a surprise. And I don't know if it's like an offense to you guys. Some people think it's an offense, some people think it's not. Like, hey, you can speak Malay pretty well. Like, what was that supposed to mean? Are we not supposed to be speaking fluently in English?
Yeah, I mean, especially when there's always the argument brought up, especially when you said, oh, science and maths should be in English because English is what you study in unis. And when people say, tapi bahasa kebangsaan how, then I do understand the concern, because I myself don't want Bahasa Malaysia to be something that gets lost in the pursuit of progression as a country. Because that's still identity, like it or not, we are Malaysians, and that's our language. Like Mirosha was saying, when I went overseas and studied, that's one of the things I suddenly felt so happy. I can speak BM with people.
But
Yeah.
do you feel that our policy on language does not suit our people? Like, for example, I really like Malay, I enjoy it, but at the same time, I really do not feel that it's a good language for science and math. Like, I feel that our country should focus on getting people to speak it with other people. A lot of people are turned off by, you have to study poems in school. You have to read like this literature that doesn't really make sense because our government doesn't allow controversial stuff. Instead of just getting people to learn to love the language, like in 2015, I believe like the word of the year in English was the pronoun day, right? T-H-E-Y. Okay, maybe not. Alright, I heard this news that the word they, T-H-E-Y, was a very popular word because it's a gender neutral pronoun. Because
That's true.
being more inclusive with gender is a very important thing now. More awareness is being brought up. But a lot of people don't know this. I read about this on Twitter from someone I follow, that Malay has had a gender neutral pronoun for much longer. Dia. D-I-A.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah,
Because
dear,
it doesn't
yeah.
refer to a gender, it's just like that person.
Yes.
Diorang.
Yeah.
diorang,
So,
yeah.
it's something I feel we don't really appreciate about our own language just because of our feelings perhaps towards our country or our government. That
Yes.
we don't learn to love Malay as we should.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you said that it's not a language that suited for science and maths, because I mean a lot of the terms in science and maths comes from the West, and obviously they'll be in English. But okay, if you break it down, what's the point of studying science and maths? Is the point of studying science and maths to love your language? No, right? It's to increase your knowledge in those fields. So the best way I feel would be, obviously, perfect world, best way is to study in whatever language you feel comfortable. But if you had to standardize it, I am leaning more towards English being the better choice. But it is interesting, like you said, you bring up literature, art, and all this. Language basically is an art. So obviously that's one of the ways to get people to like the language a lot more, whether that's through movies or literature or poems and things like that. Obviously, you touched on the fact that some of the things you learn in school were politicized as well. Like, you cannot study this because blah blah, you cannot do this blah blah. that is something
Well,
that yeah.
I feel like the problem is there when we teach English as well. Perhaps I don't feel it as someone who English is my first language, because even though my parents spoke Tamil, they spoke to me in English all the time for some reason. A lot of people complain that a lot of the literature we learn in like English class as well, it's not very good at inspiring a love for the language. Like,
Yes, agree.
imagine if like you were reading Shakespeare, it's not really relevant. But the thing is, for a lot of us, we do get exposed to a lot of other English media.
Yep.
So let's say, you don't like what you're learning in school, you can just go to the cinema and all that. But
That's very true.
for a lot of, let's say, non-Malay people, they don't really get exposed to Malay media normally
Yeah.
outside of what maybe they hear in an ad or
Yeah.
see in school. So I think it's very important how we teach Malay to people, because I feel that the reason why we've had such segregation in language is because of the way that it's taught right now.
Yeah.
This is not only Malay. I feel like, what Asyraf said about people assuming that, if he does not speak English that well
Yeah,
as
it's like a
fluently, right?
perception.
It's like that typical perception that they have. Actually, I feel like it happens to all races. People think that, because most of the time I speak in English, so some of them assume that I don't know Tamil. Like, they think I'm a coconut because they like, no, but like people who, like Indians who speak good English, like they don't know Tamil, and like they just assume that, when I went for interviews, because there was this contest, like I made it through that contest, so the contest was in English. So when I went for Tamil interviews, right, like before I went, they were like, the first question they asked is, how come you can speak Tamil but you give English speeches? And like that did not happen just once. Okay, I went to 3 interviews and all 3 had that one question. And it does happen to my Chinese speaking friends as well. Like they look like what Keith said, right? Like he's a banana. So like the bananas, like they speak really good English, right? They're like, oh, you don't look like someone who knows Mandarin.
Yeah,
You don't
that
look
happens
like
to
someone
me.
who knows Tamil. I'm like, I'm brown. If I don't speak Tamil, who will? Like, I feel like, how can you say that someone looks like they can speak English like Asyraf? Like how do you tell? They look at Asyraf, they'll be like, oh, he looks like what you said, right? They thought he looks like a typical Malay, and then like
Probably
they
doesn't
didn't.
understand. You faham tak?
Yeah. See, like how do you look at? I mean, like we are in Malaysia, for God's sake. Yeah.
If you speak good English, they'd be like, so bro, are you Christian?
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, and I don't wear the black dot, so like
Yeah.
they just assume that I'm Christian.
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm Christian.
Everyone thinks I'm Christian.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm like Christian, so like Christianity's language is English. I didn't know that. Because like
Well, it will be in English. 'cause-
usually lah, but
Yeah.
It's just so weird, like, you have to be Christian, that's why you're speaking good English.
Yeah.
I just
People get very surprised when I do speak Mandarin lah, and then they will definitely ask me, am I a Christian? Because of my name Regina. Yeah, and I speak English, so I'm a Christian. And throughout my whole school life, I've actually been very scared of speaking BM. I barely even speak any BM, so only when I got into NS, that was the only chance that I ever had to converse in BM. And since then, I
really
actually
brushed
like it.
up lah.
I've actually really like speaking
Were
in
you
BM.
in the sekolah kebangsaan?
Yeah, sekolah kebangsaan.
I can see that.
Oh my god. Yes, but
Jarang dia cakap.
yeah, jarang. Apa tu jarang? Aku pun tak tahu.
Jarang is
Sikit-sikit
rare,
je.
right?
Yeah. Oh, Malay
I know.
unsure though.
Because in my school, because my whole class was Chinese. The first class were all Chinese only, so I don't really get to interact with Malays a lot, and so that's why I'm very bad in BM.
Only time we used it was like in Karangan. So we had to make it through BM, so like we speak that.
Justru
that proper-
itu.
Yeah.
Bagaimana? Walau bagaimanapun.
Even when I speak in Malay, actually the Malay that I speak is not the usual conversational kind of Malay. It's the Karangan Malay, like.
Yeah.
Oh my god, really?
Boleh ke? I feel like people don't
weird.
say like that, and like I know some of my friends who like they just bring out the literal Karangan kind of Malay and they speak it to hawkers, and I'm like,
Bagai
that is
awal
not
dengan kebing.
berapakah
Kebing.
berapakah pisang goreng ini? One of my friends literally said that, and I'm like, oh my god, no. Oh my goodness, that's not how you do it. But yeah, it happens lah. It happens.
Coming back to our original topic, I think
Actually, we were
like,
talking about racism,
yes,
right?
but
But language and racism, I feel
Language
like
and
it's
racism
Very
is
closely
something
related.
that's very
in Malaysia, you're really divided
Because of language.
Because of language.
Yeah.
Especially like the kind of media and the kind of interest that you have, like the mass media we have in Malaysia, especially when it comes to movies and like when you see on Astro, it's all the market is definitely Malays. Like you rarely see things that are very general for other races, and I really wonder like. How do you guys find your form of and source of entertainment? Like, is it always international media, or is it also sometimes you find it within Malaysia as well?
I think for me, mainly international. I do try very hard to try and seek out local media as much as possible. So I do try and watch as much Malaysian films as possible, and ones that are different languages as well. So there was The Journey a few years ago. I think I did watch KL Gangster when it was on Astro. I know we had a long discussion about Jagat earlier. That's something that I did want to watch, but I
Do
couldn't.
you guys
I didn't
remember
get the
Yasmin
time.
Ahmad?
Yeah, I think
You know
everyone
her
remembers
movie?
Yasmin
Oh my
Ahmad.
god, yes.
Where I feel like
Right.
no one can. I feel like that era, the Yasmin Ahmad
Yeah.
era, was where most Malaysians went together. It was the Ola Bola
Of that time,
yeah,
yeah.
like after
Yeah.
Yasmin Ahmad passed away, right?
Yeah.
I feel like her movie era just came back through Ola Bola. Like that one movie that uses all 4 languages. Yeah, so I feel like, Yasmin Ahmad's time, I just wish someone else would come up with movies like she did, because like she focused a lot on unity, especially like interracial.
Yeah, and Yasmin
relationships,
Ahmad,
right?
yeah, definitely Yasmin Ahmad was someone that, I think everyone our age will remember the old Petronas ad of the
Yeah.
Chinese boy with the
Never
Malay
failed
girl.
to make people cry.
Yeah. And obviously one of her biggest hits was Sip It.
Talent Time.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So these are all really good representations of Malaysia as a whole, and definitely, I think we truly lost a really big
Great.
talent when
Yeah.
We did.
I think we touched on Ola Bola earlier, and definitely Ola Bola has been in the news recently because of the changing of the goal scorer at the end,
Yes.
and how the ex-players are coming out and saying like, oh, you shouldn't have changed it, are you trying to change history? And then on the other side, people are arguing, oh no, we said it from the start, it's just fiction, it's just inspired, it's not based on the true story. So
But why that change, right?
yeah, so I think mainly people are asking why did they change it. I think Kula was saying about how the whole fictional story thing is just a cop out.
It's very much cop out. Because as a filmmaker, you should know that every decision you make in your film, it sends a message. Whether you like it or not, every choice you make sends a message. And when you make that kind of change, I'm not saying it's a wrong change to make, but just like the justification that, oh, it's my story and I would like to tell it
Yep.
this way, but it's very clearly based on real events.
Yep.
So Malaysians who feel like they have a long history of being sidelined, they probably would feel rather unhappy about this change. I don't blame them really. I know some people are like, it's just a movie, you should get over it. But movies do reflect our reality. Like
Yes.
if you compare movies in the West from 20-30 years ago and now, I was watching this Sylvester Stallone movie from like 30 years ago, and it was all just white dudes, and I'm like, why? Like the only black person in that movie was a criminal. And I'm like, whoa, this is really terrible. But if you compare it with movies now, where like more people get more roles.
Yep.
Like I don't think a movie like Creed could have existed maybe 30, 40
Creed
years
was
ago.
great.
Ashraf, did you watch Ola Bola?
This is very embarrassing. Unfortunately, not. But I am
It's okay,
planning
Kula
to.
hasn't
actually-
Yeah, I haven't either.
I am planning to tonight actually.
Oh, cool, have
that's
fun.
cool, yeah. But did you already know about the controversy surrounding it and everything?
I have not.
So, when I was watching it, like half of the cinema was filled with people wearing the Malaysian jersey, and they were of all races, and it was just so cool. And believe it or not, like there were people who were carrying the flag. Yeah, it was like 2 to 3 days after the release, so the semangat was still really there. So I watched it twice, by the way, and I watched it with like mixed race friends. So when they were speaking in Mandarin, they were like, "Oh, he's saying this, and subtitle is like wrong in this line." And then like when they're speaking in Tamil, I'm like, "Oh, he means this," So it was fun, and till the end of the movie, it was just so cool. But after a few days when the controversy came up, right, it just sort of, I know it's true and it's necessary, like why must you make that one change? Because I know it's based on, it's inspired by true stories, but like fictional, right? So but why didn't you change anything else but that? Yeah, so that's why people
they
were
changed
like,
the
if you
score
change
as
few
well.
other stuff, but it's like that scoring
Yep.
point, right, was pretty much one of the most fundamental scenes in the
Yep.
movie. Yeah, and you change it, like the whole movie was actually about that match, and you change that goal scorer,
Yeah.
right? It sort of just killed the vibe of that movie, because it was about unity, and then people suddenly start bringing in racial issues, and then like it just
what kind of change was it? Like
The race of the person.
the race of
that,
the person
that
that
scored
scored.
a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it changed from initially who was it
Sabah.
supposed to be?
James.
It was-
James, he was a Chinese guy from Sabah,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry lah, we're spoiling it for you,
No,
but
no, okay. Because
Sorry.
technically we are spoiling it for the
yeah,
listeners anyway.
but sorry lah, if you never watched by now, you deserve
No,
it lah.
Yeah.
But so Ali was the guy that scored it at the end. And it was a bit like, it was almost like they were teasing us because the ball came to the guy that was supposed to be James. He's called Eric in the movie.
Yeah.
The ball came to Eric. Eric, he looked like he was going to shoot it, and then he passed it to Ali, and Ali scored.
I see.
It was almost like a tease. I was on the side of like Kula was saying, I was one of those people saying it's just a movie, it's just a movie. Why is this such a big deal? But after Kula said like, well, it is kind of like a cop out that they are not giving any explanation of why they changed it. I do agree that the director or whoever made the decision to change should at least come out and say, oh, we made this change because blah blah blah. I myself want a justification because I don't mind that they changed it personally. I don't feel any sort of emotional anger or anything.
Yeah,
I just need an
I didn't feel
explanation.
it.
I'm just
Whatever it is, it's
wondering
a
why they
movie.
felt the need to make
Yeah.
the change.
That
Yes.
change.
I think actually Malaysians will be okay with it. I think that a lot of times people assume that Malaysians are less racially friendly than we actually are.
They assume.
Yeah, I mean they are like extreme people who like they're always on the news.
I feel
are
like
generally
it's more
cool.
of a minority now compared to the older generation. If you look at it, our generation is becoming more open about things. Like now we are talking about racial issues, and we have all of the races here right now, and we can openly talk about it. And
Strangely, I do agree with you, but
not all races, lah.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
I know. I mean, like Iban people were thinking about
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but,
yeah. Punjabis, you too.
You're in our hearts.
But
but I guess whenever I see pictures of Malaysia in like the 60s and 70s, it feels like a much more relaxed place compared to now. It's strange, but if you look back, it's just that a lot of issues which are issues now weren't issues back then. Like
maybe
the
they weren't raised those days. They were like, yeah, it existed, but they did not really make such a big deal out of it.
yeah, like
Yeah.
if you compare like life in Sabah Sarawak with life here. For example, in
They're
Sabah,
more united there.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can just. I remember our ministry was complaining recently. They were like, "Oh yeah, if your place is not halal, but you say that it's
Oh my
pork free,
Yeah.
we're gonna come after you
Yes.
because you're confusing people."
I saw that one.
Whereas in like Sabah Sarawak, it's very easy. You can just like ask the guy like, "Hey, is this halal or not?" Like you don't even need to look at certification, and then he'll be like, "Oh yeah, it's halal." Oh no, it's not halal. And most people are like, "Okay, all right," and they'll decide based on that. So I don't know. Like Malaysia, it feels that
Peninsula.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially in
Peninsula
KL.
Malaysia.
You know what I find funny about Ola Bola movie? So many people made comments about them changing the race of the final goal scorer when they actually changed the race of our Malaysian coach and no one even knew.
What?
The original Malaysian coach at that time, his name was Karl Heinz. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's basically a German dude. Okay, and in the movie it was Harry Mountain, which is a British guy.
I can't believe they call him Harry Mountain.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this has been a good discussion. We're sort of running out of time now. How do you think racism in our country is going forward? Do you think it's getting worse or do you think it's getting better? Do you think language plays a part? Do you think your parents play a part? Definitely let us know in the comments down below and we'll try and respond. Once again, thank you for listening and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Oh.